So this is the LG XBOOM XL7. Now, even though it does have its shortcomings, personally, I like its mellow sound signature, and I think the customizable light feature up top is a nice touch. But today, we're going to see how the LG XBOOM XL7 stacks up to smaller and more portable options, like the JBL Boombox 3 and the Sony XG500. Regarding pricing, the LG XBOOM XL7 has a retail price of $600, which I do feel is rather pricey because its direct competitors like the Boombox 310 and the Sony XP700 retail for $500, but they like to go on sale for $450 on a regular basis. So with the XL7, I wouldn't pay more than $450 for it. But then there are the JBL Boombox 3 and Sony XG500, which both have a retail price of $500, but the XG500 likes to go on sale for $350, whereas the Boombox 3 likes to go on sale for around $450 from time to time. Nonetheless, if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, pick up a Big Head approved hat, linked down below. We've got trucker hats and snapbacks. By buying a hat, you help the unbiased and unsponsored videos coming, and it also helps us cover more products and produce more versus videos. Thank you to everyone who's already bought a hat, and look out for more designs coming soon. Now first, let's talk about the design of these speakers, because obviously they are very different from one another. Now obviously the Boombox 3 and XG500 are significantly smaller and lighter than the XL7, weighing in at 15 pounds and 12 pounds, whereas the XL7 weighs in at 34 pounds. So with both the Boombox and XG500, they're very easy to carry around because they're very lightweight, and they're also much more durable because they both have mostly fabric wrapped bodies. Whereas with the XL7, the speaker just isn't as durable or as portable as these other two speakers because it has a mostly plastic body that just loves to collect scratches, and the sheer size of the speaker just makes it harder to transport. However, the XL7 does have built-in wheels, so transporting it is a little easier, but it's just not as easy to take on the go with you when compared to these other more portable options. But I think the important thing that we need to point out here is that all of these speakers are water resistant. The Boombox 3 and XG500 are more water resistant than the XL7, but the important thing is if any of these speakers get splashed on or rained on, they're all going to be perfectly fine. However, something the XL7 has over these other two speakers is that it has a decent looking light feature. Now there's an LED screen on the top that has its own set of animations, and you can also customize what goes on the screen, and there's also a ring light down below. Overall, this is a decent looking light feature as light features go, because I do have to point out that the XG500 also has a light feature, but this light feature is tucked inside the passive radiators of this speaker, making it very hard to actually see it. So personally, I never use the light feature on the speaker, and I just enjoy the improved battery life. Now when it comes to battery life, for starters, battery life on the XL7 really varies a lot more depending on how you use it when compared to the smaller, more portable speakers. If you use the XL7 at a higher volume, that's going to drain your battery life faster. If you use it with the light feature turned on, that's going to drain your battery life faster. Or if you use it with its bass boost feature turned on, that's going to drain your battery life faster as well. Now the XL7 has an advertised battery life of 20 hours, but this advertised battery life of 20 hours is with this speaker playing at 50% volume, which is already a really good listening volume, but that's with the light feature turned off, but with the sound boost EQ turned on, which is good. But real world use, I was able to get 10 hours playback time out of this speaker while it was set at 75% volume with the light feature turned on and with the sound boost EQ turned on as well. But then there's the XG500, which has an advertised battery life of 30 hours, but this advertised battery life of 30 hours is with this speaker playing at 50% volume, which is a decent listening volume, and that's with the mega bass feature turned on, which is good, and that's also with the light feature turned off, which is personally how I like to use this speaker anyways. But real world use with this speaker playing at 80% volume and with the mega bass feature turned on and with the light feature turned on, the speaker is good for about 8 to 9 hours of playback time. But then there's the Boombox 3, which has an advertised battery life of 24 hours, but that's with this speaker playing at 50% volume, which again is a decent listening volume. But real world use with the Boombox 3 playing at 80% volume, it's good for about 8 hours of playback time. So overall, I will say that the XBOOM does a really good job of keeping up with these smaller and more portable Bluetooth speakers. But the main difference here that I do want to point out is how these speakers charge. With the XG500, you still have to be mindful of the included power power brick in order to charge it up. Whereas with both the XBOOM and the Boombox 3, they charge via a universal AC cable. So personally, I just feel that if you were to take either the Boombox 3 or the XBOOM over to a friend's house, and if you needed to charge them up, it's going to be a lot easier to find one of these cables lying around instead of having to drag along your power brick. Now, when it comes to connectivity, all of these speakers can be connected to two devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ. Latency isn't an issue for any of these speakers, so you can always use them to watch videos on your phone. But when it comes to audio codecs, the Boombox 3 only has support for SBC, whereas the XBOOM has support for SBC and AAC. But then there's the XG500, which has support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC, which is Sony's own in-house high-res audio codec. Just keep in mind that if you do want to take advantage of LDAC, you do have to be an Android user because iPhones top out at AAC. But now let's talk about the ports on these speakers because there are some major differences here. Now, first off, I do have to point out that the XBOOM does not have an audio jack, so you cannot use it with a wired connection. And personally, I do feel that this is rather ridiculous because most other box speakers out there have an audio jack, and both the Boombox 3 and XG500 have audio jacks as they should. But all of these speakers do have USB-A ports on them, so you can charge your own devices. But with both the Sony and XBOOM, you can plug in a USB stick and play music off of it. Now, personally, I just feel that it's time that these larger speakers move away from USB-A to a USB-C port because most phones these days now just come included with USB-C cables. But then there's the XBOOM, which has 2 1/4-inch inputs, and the XG500 has 1 1/4-inch input. So with the XBOOM and the XG500, you can plug in a microphone for karaoke. Now, even though the XBOOM does have 2 1/4-inch inputs, you can only use 1 microphone with it because the other input is meant for a guitar, which has a lot more resistance to it. Because right now, we are using the input that is meant for a microphone, so my microphone sounds good. But if we were to switch this input over to the guitar, so right now, this is actually at maximum volume, and you can barely even hear me. Okay, so we're just gonna switch this back over to the proper input. Okay, and now we're back to using the proper input. So with both the XBOOM and the Sony, you can plug in 1 microphone for karaoke if you wanted to. But now let's talk about sound. Regarding speaker setups, the XG500 has the most conventional speaker setup here. It has dual front mid-firing woofers, dual front mid-firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. But then there's the Boombox 3, which has a front mid-firing subwoofer, it has a dual front mid-firing woofers, and it has dual front mid-firing tweeters, which are stacked on top of the woofers, and it has dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. And finally, there's the XBOOM, which has an 8-inch front mid-firing woofer with exhaust ports that shoot out the front, and it has dual front mid-firing tweeters. But now we're going to jump into the sound test. The XBOOM is playing at 75% volume and with its sound boost EQ turned on. The Boombox 3 is playing at 86% volume, and we're going to be using my preferred EQ settings for this speaker, which is the bass raised by 2 clicks and the treble lowered by 1 click. And the XG500 is playing at max volume with its mega bass turned on.
You've been lost and alone.
So first, I think we need to address max volume performance on these speakers. Now, obviously, since the XBOOM is a larger speaker, it's going to get louder and have more bass than these other two speakers. However, the Boombox 3 does a very impressive job of keeping up with the XBOOM, whereas since the XG500 leans more towards a warmer sound signature, it doesn't sound as loud. However, with all of these speakers, if you were to use them while they're plugged in, you're going to get a performance bump out of them. They're all going to get louder and they're all going to have more bass. But the really interesting thing here about the XBOOM is that the performance boost that you get out of the speaker is a lot larger than the performance boost that you will get with most other speakers out there. So obviously, if you want something loud or something for larger parties, then you'll want to go with the XBOOM, and I'll say that the XL7 is good for 20-person parties, whereas the smaller, more portable speakers are good for like 10-person parties. Now, sound quality wise, the XBOOM is just going to sound fuller than these other two speakers because that 8-inch woofer is just going to give you more bass. But in general, the XBOOM has a mellow sound signature to it because the vocals are fairly emphasized on the speaker and the bass on the speaker is mostly on the audible side. Now, by no means does that mean that the speaker sounds flat, but the speaker doesn't have the same chest thumping bass that you'll find on its direct competitors. And since the speaker has front-firing exhaust ports, you can't do much to amplify its bass. And even if you were to go into its customizable EQ and raise its bass all the way up, you're not going to get all that much physicality out of it. But then there's the Boombox 3. Now, the reason why we use my preferred EQ settings on this speaker is because this speaker does lean towards a brighter sound signature. But still, thanks to the front-firing subwoofer on this speaker does have more bass than the XG500. But finally, let's talk about pairing these speakers up with other speakers. Now, with the XL7, if you have another XL7, then you can pair them up and get them to play in left and right stereo mode. Or if you have multiple XL7s and XL5s, then you can wirelessly pair them all up together and get them to play in sync, and you can have up to 100 speakers paired together. Whereas with the Boombox 3, again, if you have another Boombox 3, then you can wirelessly pair them up and get them to play in left and right stereo mode, or you can pair your Boombox 3 up to any other JBL Party Boost speaker, like either another Boombox 3, a Boombox 2, an Extreme 3, a Charge 5, a Pulse 5, a Pulse 4, a Flip 5, or a Flip 6, and you can get them all to play in sync, and you can have up to 100 speakers paired together. And finally, there's the Sony XG500, which is using Sony's Party Connect. And again, if you have another XG500, then you can wirelessly pair them up and get them to play in left and right stereo mode, or you can pair your XG500 to any of Sony's other speakers that are also using Party Connect, like another XG500, XG300, XE300, XE200, XB43, XB33, or XB23, and again, you can sync them all up and you can have up to 100 speakers playing together. But the cool thing about Sony's Party Connect is that you can pair your smaller, more portable Sony speakers to any of Sony's larger box speakers that are also using Party Connect, like either an XP500, XP700, the upcoming XV800, or the XV900, and again, you can get them all to play in sync. And this is something that you can't do with JBL. Whereas with JBL's smaller Party Boost speakers, you cannot wirelessly pair them up to any of JBL's larger Party Box speakers. Just be warned, even though Sony's Party Connect is super accommodating because you can pair your smaller, more portable speakers to your larger speakers, Party Connect can sometimes be a hassle to use. Sometimes it takes forever for all of your speakers to get paired up. Sometimes all of your speakers don't get paired up on the first try, so you're going to have to go through the pairing process multiple times, and sometimes echoes do form. So personally, I do prefer to use JBL's Party Boost because it's usually just a lot easier to use. So with all that being said, if you're trying to choose between any of these three speakers, obviously if you go with the XBOOM XL7, it's going to get significantly louder and sound fuller than these other two speakers, and battery life on this speaker isn't half bad. However, this thing isn't as portable or as durable as these other two speakers. Now, if you're trying to choose between the Boombox 3 and XG500, personally I do prefer the Boombox 3 because it gets louder and it has more physicality in its bass than the XG500. But with the Boombox 3, you are paying a premium for it. Whereas with the XG500, this is also a good speaker. Plus, you can plug in a microphone, and if you have any of Sony's larger box speakers, you can also pair it up with them. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.